Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. So today I want to talk about something that you don't see. You watch these slick television shows and you tear your engine down and they take the engine out of the car, they send it off to the machine shop. This one's all nasty. But next thing you see on the next scene, the machine's all clean, they're putting brand new parts back together. And what you don't see is the cleanup. You've got these dirty pistons and rods, and you got to get all the old bearings out and clean. The block will probably come back hot tanked, and the heads will probably come back, and the crank will come back clean. But you've got all these little things. Like, look at all this junk. And this is like that starter. It was a new starter before, but it's just sat and not been used and it's corroded. But there's ways you can clean this stuff up. There's rust on the motor mounts, and you know you want to get those motor mounts cleaned up, and these bolts. And somebody somewhere, all these push rods and rockers, somebody somewhere has got to clean this stuff up. And that's what we're going to talk about today. It all starts with deciding what to use and how to use it. And if I'd have been smart, I would have pressure washed the engine before I took it out of the truck and got some of this grime off. But all the tin is still out in the back of the truck, so I'm going to wash the engine bay. So I just take a simple pressure washer and maybe use some degreaser and get all that off. But you got all these parts you're going to have to put back on. You got was a new alternator, but look, it's all corroded. And you got to use different things for different parts. And one thing you start with, just to get the grease and grime off, like that transmission cover, you just start with simple soap and water. Some type of cheap, that's a dollar store degreaser. It looks like Royal Purple or whatever that other stuff is, but it's called Prime Purple. I guess it's the same thing. It's cheap, just a few dollars a gallon. You can get Zep. These are water-based cleaners. Then you got this super heavy duty that's $10 a gallon from Harbor Freight. I haven't used it, but it says that it's corrosive to things like aluminum and copper. You look at that anodizing on that starter, that solenoid, that gold color, and the screw, and then you got the cast aluminum. Well, if you just start wildly putting this stuff on there, this 1 gallon makes 200 gallons of degreaser. So it may start corroding that stuff and turn it even more chalky than what it already is. So you got to be careful what you put this on. Zep is a little milder, and you can mix this stuff, dilute it, and just take a paintbrush. And always wear gloves and safety glasses and protect yourself, even when you're using just these soaps, because that stuff it'll burn you pretty good. Never use things like gasoline or kerosene. There are petroleum products out there that you can use, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But just a pan and some water-based cleaners, some paintbrushes, and some gloves. And sometimes you can use, this is a mild Scotch-Brite. I guess this is like an 600 grit or 800 grit or something. It's a real mild. I couldn't find any purple ones for this video. I've got some somewhere stashed. And even WD-40 itself is it's a pretty good degreaser. You can wipe like plastics and things off with WD-40, and it'll take grease and grime, and I use it on lawnmowers and stuff because it cleans up plastic lawnmower parts pretty good, and it'll take most of the crud off. It's not meant to be a cleaner, but it is. It works as one. And then you start getting into the chemical-based products, which I think Vaporust is. I don't know what's in it. I think it's water-based, and it's also good. It's safe for the environment, but you still don't want to get it in your eyes and expose it to your skin very long. And then when it comes to aluminum, I use things like this Alumi-Brite that they clean tractor and trailers with, big aluminum parts. This dilutes like 15 to 1. You can put it in a sprayer, but it will, if you leave it in a sprayer, I've got one in the cabinet over there. If you leave it in the sprayer for any period of time at all, it just kind of stops working. It kind of melts the parts inside. I think this is a caustic. And then the mag wheel cleaner is very similar, but it's strong. But you can clean, like say we have the alternator and the nose of that starter and even the throttle body over there, but you really don't want to expose that throttle body to it because it's got a lot of electrical. Even the alternator, you'd have to wipe it on the alternator. But the intake manifold on this truck is aluminum, and it's painted black. You could spray that mag cleaner or this Alumi-Brite on it and let it set somewhere out of the sun, and it'll actually take the paint right off of it. It might take a couple coatings, and that mag cleaner will do the same thing. But it's not, this stuff is, I think the Aluminum Bright will work on polished aluminum, but the mag cleaner, you don't want to put it on anything polished because it will dull aluminum wheels. I've learned the hard way on that one. But things like Evaporust, you can take Evaporust, and I save these little containers. This is like a Kool-Aid container. And you can take the small parts, like that little mount, lifting tab, but you don't want to drop those in Evaporust until they're clean. You want to get the grease off of them and the loose rust, and then make you a little container of Evaporust up, drop it in there, and in a few hours, and maybe the next morning, like, you can't put that motor mount in there, but I do have some bigger containers I can drop it in. I just don't have a lot of this. It's kind of expensive. I think this little jug was like $30. And you can get 5-gallon buckets of it for about $100, I think, at the parts houses. And it works really good. And once it starts losing its power, you can keep refreshing it, or you can just throw it away because it's biodegradable. But there are lots of different things. This is just a small example of the stuff that I have, and I have lots more things. Even soap and water, like dish soap. When you get your engine back from the machine shop, it might look clean, but it's not clean. So you're going to have to take that engine block and take it outside and use some bottle brushes. More than likely, they're going to have the freeze plugs out. And here's some bottle brushes. These are short ones, but you can get longer ones just for an engine block. You really want to scrub that engine down whenever you get it back to the machine shop and get all of the machining residue off of it. But you also want to protect that engine just as soon as you wash it, because the piston cylinders and the lands where the cam or the crank bolts and stuff goes, all that stuff will rust, and you really don't want no surface rust on any of that stuff. There are some things. Eastwood has a wipe. I don't have any. It's a kind of metal prep that acid etches, but you don't want to put that on your cylinders either. You can put it on the outside of your engine block. You definitely don't want to put no type of metal prep stuff down inside of your cylinder. The only thing you want to put in that cylinder is oil. Some kind of oil. You can use a little WD-40, but you can use, the best thing is just straight up motor oil. The same thing with these pistons. These are aluminum, the rods and the pistons themselves. And I've got one broken piston, so I'm going to have to replace. I think I'm going to have to replace them all, because the guy that was doing the engine, after he looked at it for a few minutes, he said it's probably going to have to be bored, and more than likely, if he bores it very much, I'll have to have new pistons, which I'm going to have one new piston anyway. This brings us to the next step, is this PSC 1000. This is like a mineral spirits. It's a petroleum distillate, but it has a high flash of 141 degrees, so it's not, I guess it's not as prone to self-igniting, but it will. You know, a lot of these things, if you leave them laying around, if you leave like a shop rag covered with this stuff in the window, it can spontaneous combust. Stuff like that will. This is supposed to be less likely to do it, but we keep stuff like that in here. We just got our parts washer last week. We had a little small, that's a tiny one there, and the pump's out. So we got this one, and I just got it. It took 10 gallon of this PSC 1000, and that stuff is like $60 a gallon. I mean, a 5 gallon, $60 for a 5-gallon jug. And so I got $129 in the parts washer, and $120, or probably $129, in just the chemical itself. But this chemical should last a long time, and it took the whole entire, I think there's about 9 gallon in here, and it just barely is up to the top of the screen. It really needs to be over that, because it shows a level line right there. So more than likely, I'm going to have to get another 5-gallon bucket. But this is probably a one-time deal for me. I'll never use all this chemical up. But the cool thing about this, and you should wear gloves when you're in here, is it's got this brush that I bought extra, which was in our last video. I picked it up from Amazon. It says it's USA assembled. Another way of saying we unpacked it and sent it to you in the USA after getting it from China. But we'll give it a try and see what kind of grease we can get off here. Here's a few things that I want to try to clean up here. Got this light above me, just kind of hanging on barely. It's going to fall and hit me in the head. But let's give this rocker arm. It's pretty nasty. Got some baked on crud. Use this cleaning brush, this solvent. The solvent comes right out the end of the brush. Awesome. I got it cramped. That black is just coming right off. We're not going to paint these, so all we need to do is just get the loose grease off and the dirt. You know, there's 200,000 miles worth of dirt on here. Watching somebody clean parts is like watching paint dry. It's not something you want to do, and it's always the new guy that gets to do it. He gets to learn the ropes the hard way. Now this is really baked on this mount. It might have to soak, but if we got a soaking tub over here to the side. You gotta have some type of safety glasses on. I'm not wearing any right at the moment, but I really need them. The most important piece of your gear is your safety glasses. See, that's just paint. Now we drop this down in that rust remover, it might take care of it. Here's a really dirty piece right here, this block off plate for the fuel pump. Look at that grime, it's just coming right off. Petroleum based seems to clean a whole lot better than anything else. That's what I recommend for getting any kind of grease off, but it's hard to use petroleum based stuff in a little tub at home. See, once we get the grease off this, we'll be able to soak this in the rust remover, and it'll take care of the rust off. It's got a little bit of gasket left on it. It'll have to be scraped. But we got the big stuff off of it. And this motor mount is mainly just rust. You just get this loose stuff off, clean it up, and soak it in rust inhibitor, rust remover, and then you can paint it up, and it'll be just like a brand new part. But you got to get the grease off of it before you soak it in that rust remover, or it won't come off. The rust won't come off under the grease. It's still clean down in there, just a little cloudy. But that's just an idea of some of the things that you can do with this parts cleaner. Now, not everybody can run out and buy a parts cleaner, and they especially can't go buy $200 worth of chemical. But like I said, though, you can get this little parts cleaner. They're about $60 for this little parts washer. It's got a pump and got the same little, it looks just like this inside, but it's got a tiny little pump, and you can get one of these for it. But the small one, I think they got a Jegs one on Amazon. I think it's about $60 or $70. And then you can get a couple of gallons. I think you put about 2 gallons of something like PSC or something. You can get smaller amounts of it. I'm not going to use any of these aluminum cleaners tonight because I'm closed up in the shop and it's way after dark. And I don't want to disturb the neighbors. But there's so much that's going to have to be cleaned. I'll probably just get the grease off of the flywheel. One of the main reasons you want to get the grease off everything is when you get it all put back together, you want to be able to see if you have any leaks or anything. And of course you want to paint the engine block. I'll probably paint it back black just like it was. Once you get all the grime off your parts, you could start using things like this drill with a wire wheel on it, scratch pads. You could even use the scratch pads in the parts washer. And then you could just start getting all the loose, scaly stuff off. I've even got a wire wheel on this bench grinder. You can take things like the bolt threads. I need a mount, a flat plate, so you can lay those bolt threads in there, because I have shot bolts all the way across the room and into the ceiling before. So you got to be careful. You really need, if you're going to use a wire wheel on a bench grinder, you definitely need a plate here to work off from. And then you can take our little bolts and clean your threads up. But there's just so much that's going to have to be cleaned. I probably won't do much of that throttle body. I may wipe some of that Lumen Bright on it, and maybe just wipe it on. And may not do much to the starter either, because it's just going to be a core after it fails, after 10 or 12 cranks anyway, so we won't worry about cleaning it up. We might wipe it off. When you get done with all that, I mean, let's face it, it's still not going to be clean. you got your bolt holes, and you really need something like this. These are not very expensive. These are thread chasers, and you can clean your bolt threads. You can clean your blind holes because these are flat, and they're made to clean the hole out. And you'll blow them out good and run these thread chasers down it. Make sure all your threads are good, especially on aluminium. If you got some metric aluminium stuff, you really want to make sure the threads are good and clean and not galled on those. You don't want to take a head to the machine shop and it got stripped out holes all in it, and it just be junk anyway after they do the work on it. So you want to make sure you check everything, especially after you get it back and you're getting ready to put it together. Threads, your torque won't be right if you got dirty threads and you've got crud down in the holes. You start running these new bolts. Of course, I'm going to use new head bolts on this 350 that I'm building. So you start running them down there and it's full of crud, you're not going to get your torque right, and you're going to wind up with a blowed head gasket. And so, yeah, something I never done in the past. We've done stuff in straw down inside of a barn. We're lucky that, I guess the goats could probably eat out of the oil pan by the time we got done with it. There'd be so much hay down inside the engine, but I mean, they worked and we did what we had to do. It's all we had. Used pole tripods to lift the engine out of the car, or a good tree branch somewhere, and that's, I enjoyed it. And those seemed like those engines lasted forever, as crappy as they were put together and slopped on a little paint, the Craigslist rebuild, but they look good. And we weren't doing it to sell then, we were doing it to drive. We had to have something to drive because we had to fix our own junk. That's what happens when you're poor, but we were rich in fun, so don't have to worry about that. Well, that is just a little short view of what I'm going to have to go through over the next week or two when I start getting my parts back. I'm going to have to clean this stuff and clean it some more, and then clean it one more time, and then put it together, and then clean it one more time. And I think I'm going to wait till I get it almost completely assembled before I start throwing paint at it. That means you're going to have to clean the engine all the way back off again, because there's going to be oil and all kinds of junk all over the engine when you get it assembled. People are clean. There are people that have clean room environments, just like they're putting computers together. And I envy that and I admire it, but I'm probably not going to do that, to be honest with you. And a lot of people are not. Let's just do it the simple way. Clean it up, put it together, make it run, and have fun. Let's not be too picky about it. I thank you guys for watching. And in this case, stay clean.